Peace and blessings, greetings. Once again, we're going to get into some more of this Moorish understanding here. We talked about who, why Moorish American, and I think in order to give one a greater understanding, at least from my perspective, of being Moorish American, or who I consider to be Moorish American. I think there are some requirements, of course. Your birthright is your birthright. No one can take away man's descent nature, but to be a true citizen of a nation, uh, you have to show and prove that. That's all my vets. You know, they know. You got to be willing to lay your life down for the ideal of your nation and the principles on it. So, I think there's a couple things. Just like if you get to looking at what, uh, let's just say the top 12, um, what we call civilized countries or economic countries, they require, of course, one, to be a citizen of a nation, you got to know the history of the nation, right? It's what you go to school, you learn history and these things. And so people who come to try to get citizenship from other nations, they got to learn. They got to go and learn the history of the nation. And so if you don't know the history of the nation, to me, that's a requirement to be saying, well, I'm a Moorish American citizen. It's hard to say you Moorish American and don't know the history of your people. And this is how you can tell the difference. Like I said in the other video, talking about ones who just claim themselves to be Moors and who's are Moorish American, who are actually citizens of this nation. So you got to know the history. That's a requirement. You got to live in the nation for a certain amount of time period. Most nations require you live in a nation 5 to 7 years before you can become a citizen of the nation. And that shows that you not only are able to work in the nation to support yourself, but that you are there to contribute to the nation and not just live off the nation. And to me, that's another requirement for ones who want to call themselves Moorish Americans. You ain't lived in the Moorish America 5 to 7 years. How are you gonna say you're Moorish American? You ain't never even lived in the nation. And one might say, well, what does that mean, live in the nation? Once again, we talk about working, talking about educating, we talking about being a part of that collective energy. So if you ain't out here being industrious, spreading this gospel, being about your Father's work, delivering the message to our people about their nationality and divine creed, you ain't. Let's put it like this: Act 4 says, "One's got to live life accordingly." You can preserve these holy and divine laws and obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you're a part and parcel of this government and must live the life accordingly. And so, if you haven't spent good 5, 7 years living this life accordingly, you ain't been putting in anything into the nation. How can you call yourself a citizen of it? And that really is something that should be impactful for all those who find themselves continuing trying to run up in the European courts in the corporate United States. Like you continue if you're trying to find a way to live and survive in that nation, how can you say you're living or you in the Moorish America? That's part of it. It's like it means you got to come up out the other nation to live in this nation. And that's the same way with how other nations, or the top 12 nations, look at when people become citizens. They got to come to their nation. They're not in another nation living and then saying, I want to be a citizen of this nation. They had to come to their nation and live in and be a part of it and be a part of the economics and the labor and the law and the entertainment of that nation. That's living in the nation. And so, you know, if you ain't living in the nation, you don't know no Moorish artists. There's plenty of Moorish artists out there, Moorish music, Moorish um, artisans, jewelry makers, and all kinds of stuff. But you ain't supporting them. You ain't being a part of that circulation of the funds in the Moorish community. You ain't living in it. So we looking at knowing the history, living in the nation. What else is there? We got of course, you gotta have that good background. No nation is taking people who are not going to be productive or who are a threat to the nation. Safety of the women and children of the nation and the men of the nation. So you can claim to be Moorish American all day, but if you you got a track record showing that you ain't, that you're not good for the society, then who's gonna let you be a part of the nation? And these are just things that, like I said, to me, it's very important. And when you're looking at and seeing, okay, who's really Moorish American citizens, and not one just claiming to be Moorish American or just saying I'm Moorish. There's some requirements. You got to be living, the life accordingly. It's a part of our divine constitution. It's in the makeup. One, demonstrating love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Keeping their hearts and minds pure with love. That's right there in the Constitution. Pretty simple. So if ones ain't demonstrating that, then how can they be calling themselves Moorish American? And it's not being about being perfect, but striving for perfection. How you gonna be Moorish American? You don't even know the laws of your nation. You don't know the requirements, and so I think, for me, part of why I call myself Moorish American is because, and a citizen of my nation, is because I can check those boxes off. I've been demonstrating this demonstration over close to almost 20 years now, living in my nation, working in my nation, creating things, creating opportunities in economics and art and every aspect I can personally contribute to. Teaching, support my nation financially, knowing my history, having a solid background. So, for me personally, I look at those things and doing those things, and that's how I take synapses, or how when ones come to me proclaiming, professing to be, other than what they say they are, this is how I can start to use, that measuring stick. This is how we also help one tighten up by giving them a lesson. It's hard to say you're Moorish American and you ain't got no Quran, Koran, from your noble prophet. Hard to say you're Moorish American, you ain't got no keys, you ain't got the questionnaires, you ain't got 101 keys, you ain't got no hadiths, you ain't got no oral statements. These things are necessary. because that's part of the history. So I just want to make something quick. Just continuing this conversation. So I continue to try to express uh, for my children what's necessary. The legacy that we're leaving, and what's theirs by birthright. It's yours by birthright, but you got to know what to do with it. In order to know what to do with it, you got to study yourself. You got to study what it is to be Moorish, and the Moorish deal with the divine, and the sacred. So you should be looking up that sacred geometry, sacred sounds, like sacred shapes or divine shapes. It's all kind of things when we talk about divinity that one should be drawn off of and learning how to make a part of themselves.